Today, we're diving into one of the biggest shifts in law school admissions to hit in decades. The American Bar Association recently voted to allow law schools to bypass the LSAT or any standardized test entirely under certain conditions. It's a move that's shaking up the entire legal education world. Some people are saying it's the end of the LSAT as we know it. Others think it's barely a blip on the radar. And the truth is, the LSAT is far from dead. In fact, if you're serious about standing out in admissions, earning law school scholarship money, and securing your spot at a top law school, the LSAT remains your most powerful tool. So if you're at all interested in going to law school or you're already deep into LSAT prep, this video is for you. Today, I'm going to explain what the ABA's decision actually does and doesn't mean, why law schools aren't exactly rushing to throw out the LSAT, and how you can take advantage of the current situation to boost your odds of getting in and potentially save tens of thousands of dollars in law school tuition. Now, let's start by clarifying what exactly happened. What did the ABA decide? They passed a policy that allows law schools to apply for a variance. In plain English, this means a law school can request special permission to go test optional or to stop requiring a standardized test altogether for a period of 3 to 5 years. If a school's variance is approved, they get to run an admissions experiment and then reapply later if they want to continue. Now, a couple of key points to remember. This is not an automatic across-the-board policy. Schools don't get to simply say, we're not using the LSAT anymore. They must apply, meet certain requirements, and gain approval. The second key point to remember is that even if a variance is approved, law schools still have to keep an eye on their bar passage rates, 1L performance, and accreditation standards. Because if they fail to maintain adequate bar passage rates, they risk losing their accreditation, which is a nightmare scenario for any law school. Now, proponents say this change is going to increase diversity and accessibility. They claim the LSAT is a barrier for many qualified applicants who don't test well, but would still make great lawyers. In contrast, critics are concerned that without a standardized test metric like the LSAT, admissions could become more subjective, with heavier weight on GPAs and personal statements, both of which can be hard to compare fairly across different undergraduate institutions and majors. Now, you might ask yourself, if a test optional policy is allowed, wouldn't schools want to jump on it to broaden their applicant pools? The short answer is probably not, especially not the top-ranked schools. And let's break down why. The first big reason is prestige and the U.S. News Law School rankings, which are a huge factor in how law schools are perceived. Higher median LSAT scores boost a school's ranking, and top law schools want to do everything they can to protect their rankings. Dropping the LSAT would make it a lot harder for them to maintain that data-driven prestige. Second is predictive power. The LSAT isn't just a random test. Research has shown that LSAT scores correlate relatively well with 1L performance and bar passage rates. Schools rely on LSAT scores to gauge whether a student can handle the intense legal curriculum. Removing that metric could lead to admitting a cohort that isn't fully prepared, jeopardizing the school's stats on bar passage, and again, of course, risking their accreditation. Now, law schools and the ABA are conservative bureaucracies known for moving at a glacial pace when it comes to big changes. It's just part of their culture. Large institutions with big reputations to protect don't make radical shifts without seeing the data, results, and real-world outcomes first. The new variance policy is an experiment, not a mandate. Now, top schools are unlikely to go test optional schools, but others might try it, like mid-ranked schools ranked maybe 50 to 100 in the U.S. News rankings. These schools have enough name recognition to survive a slight dip in the metrics if they think a test optional policy could broaden their applicant pool enough. They also have enough flexibility to experiment if they think it gives them a competitive advantage in attracting diverse candidates. There are also some innovative early adopters, like Arizona State University in the past, which have shown an openness to pilot programs. If a school already has a reputation for forward-thinking admissions policies, they might want to take advantage of that variance sooner rather than later. Even so, these schools are still going to be extremely cautious, and they'll be watching to see how the change affects bar passage rates and overall 1L performance. Going test optional is a gamble, and schools don't typically love gambling with accreditation on the line. And so even schools that apply for the variance will still be admitting the majority of students with LSAT scores on record and only making the rare exception here and there. And so if you are applying to law school, You can't just ignore the LSAT because of these recent headlines. And in fact, the LSAT might matter more than ever because of, first off, scholarships. Merit-based law school scholarships are heavily tied to your LSAT score because it's a transparent metric. Schools, even those who apply for the variance, will love boasting about their median LSAT score, and they're going to pay for it in the form of law school scholarship money. If you skip the LSAT entirely or submit a bad score, you're going to miss out on thousands or maybe even tens of thousands of dollars in potential law school scholarship money. Also, the LSAT helps you offset a mediocre GPA, because by the time you're applying to law school, your GPA is typically pretty locked in and fixed, but the LSAT is a great opportunity to counterbalance a low GPA and maximize your odds of getting in. I've seen students with GPAs around 3.0 or 3.2 pull off admission to top 20 law schools and big scholarships by nailing a high LSAT score. If you don't take the LSAT, you lose this powerful advantage. Why do law schools value the LSAT so heavily? Because it gives them a uniform measuring stick. Without it, schools have to rely on GPAs from very different undergrad institutions with very different majors, plus subjective soft factors like application essays. So if you need to boost your odds of getting in and you're willing to put in the work to do well on a test like the LSAT, it is your friend. It sets you apart from others in a clear, verifiable way. Now, let's say you had a rocky start in college, but you turned things around later. The LSAT is a great chance to show your upward trajectory, discipline, and your ability to handle pressure. Getting a top LSAT score, whether the first attempt or on a retake, demonstrates resilience and self-improvement, which are traits that law schools appreciate. To drive the point home, let me share a real example from one of my students. She had a 3.2 GPA, not great, well below the medians of most law schools, and she was worried that her GPA would hold her back when she wanted to go to a top 20 law school. But she focused carefully and closely on LSAT prep for several months, tackled the LSAT systematically, and ended up with a 173 on test day. This got her admission to a top 20 law school with a 75% tuition scholarship worth tens of thousands of dollars in savings over the course of 3 years. The LSAT allowed her to rewrite her narrative, overshadow a weaker GPA, and prove she could handle the academic rigors of law school. That's why the LSAT is still so powerful and can be a real game changer for your admissions outcomes. So don't get distracted by the test optional buzz in the news. It might sound exciting, might be confusing, but the thing is, this is going to be implemented very slowly over time as law schools evaluate how it affects metrics like 1L GPA, bar passage rates, job placements, and more. Law schools are not flipping a major switch overnight, and the U.S. News rankings still weigh heavily in admissions decisions because they want to climb or maintain their ranking. So if they need applicants with competitive LSAT scores to keep them higher in their rankings, and the weightings might change in future rankings formulas, but for now and for the foreseeable future, strong LSAT data is still heavily factored in. Now, if anything, these test optional policies will create more ambiguity in admissions. Without a clear LSAT threshold or GPA threshold, you'd be rolling the dice on how each school weighs your background, personal statement, and other qualitative factors. If you have a solid LSAT score on record, your mystery regarding outcomes is removed. You have a clear, concrete advantage that you can look at by checking out, say, for example, the ABA 509 reports that show you law schools' LSAT medians. If you apply with numbers above the medians, you're more likely to get in and get scholarship money to boot. And so if you're looking to maximize your LSAT score and maximize your opportunities, double down and focus on your LSAT prep. And if you'd like my help getting the highest LSAT score possible, my team and I would be glad to help you out on your journey to 170 plus, or even better, 175 plus. We offer live online classes via Zoom, on-demand video courses, small group coaching, and one-on-one coaching. You can check out the links below to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. Now, you might be wondering, what if my GPA is strong? Do I still need the LSAT? Yes, a high GPA, of course, is great, but having a high LSAT score to match it can still unlock scholarship money and give you that competitive edge. Law schools love seeing high LSAT scores to maintain their rankings, and GPA medians have been rising significantly, especially over the past year, when more than 60% of law schools raised up their GPA medians, not just a little, but in some cases a lot. And so you want to actually check, is your GPA high relative to their new GPA medians? It may not be as much as you think it might. The T14 law schools all have GPA medians of 3.8, 3.9. You're going to want to have a high LSAT score, especially if you want to get into a top law school like that. And if you apply to law school without an LSAT score, even if you get in, you're probably going to get less scholarship money because merit aid packages are tied to having high numbers, which includes high LSAT scores. And so without an LSAT score on record at all, you're probably less competitive for those offers. And so even with this news, even with the new ABA variance policy, a strong LSAT score still matters. So if you're ready to get serious about the LSAT, maybe you're aiming for a certain score or you just want to see how far you can push yourself, check out the links below to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd love to help you get into the best law school possible and secure the scholarship money that you deserve. Anyway, folks, that's all for now. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.